This is the Business Stuff Podcast. This is where I will share the lessons I've learned from advising thousands of businesses over almost 30 years. Each episode will give you practical insight to allow you to learn from other people's mistakes. I'll be pulling in experts from our team and the world of business, and together we'll make sure your business is giving you what you want. My name is Martin, and this is the Business Stuff Podcast. Hi, it's Marty here from the Accelerator team, and I'm here with Jack again. Hi Jack, how you doing?
Hello, yeah, nice to be back.
It's good to have you, and this week we are talking about burnout.
We are indeed, yeah.
Why it happens, what to do about it.
Yeah, we've burned out all of the other guests, so I have to come on and talk about it.
Yeah, we've ran through all the topics. So, come on, and obviously we've been punning this all morning, haven't we, about how it's empty tanks and all kinds, but
yeah.
Go on then, what is burnout?
I suppose the easiest way, the best analogy or best way of talking about it is in terms of energy. So everyone's got their own energy levels, and those are both physical and mental energy levels. And at times, circumstances and things get on top of you, and that directly affects your energy levels, which then has a knock-on effect on things like your motivation. So basically, burnout's the scenario where you basically run out of energy and you just don't want to do what you're doing anymore.
So it's not necessarily that you've pulled an all-nighter and you've ran out of physical energy, although that obviously does affect your mood, I would imagine.
Yes.
If you're working too hard all of the time, that would affect your motivation, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's more the fact that if you do, 3 months worth of all-nighters, then that's where burnout's more likely to happen, where you physically, some people it can manifest as physically not being able to get out of bed on a morning when you're meant to go to work. Yeah. Because you just physically and mentally drained that you just haven't got the energy. But you
could also be completely getting all the sleep, you could be rested, but you've been mentally trying to do something hard, complex, challenging, and you could burn out of purely just on the mental side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be, everyone will probably experience it slightly differently and at different times as well. And that mental side of it ties in quite nicely with some of the stuff we've already talked about around like the change success management. Particularly like personally, like in order to make change successful, there are certain factors which are implicitly linked to your, not being burnt out. So you need to have high personal energy levels, you need to have a strong vision.
Is it worth just touching, so the change success model, is you look at the likelihood of success of any planned change?
Yes, and that's down
and
to
you look at the need to change, the desire for change.
Yeah, so that's basically the successful change happens when you focus on 3 different areas. There's the readiness for change, the capability of change, and the beliefs associated with the change. And those are broken down into like further factors underneath, but the vast majority of them are tied to like you having the physical energy and the belief in yourself to make that change happen. And obviously if you're burnt out, that's not possible.
If you're defeated by constant battles.
Yeah.
Then
and similarly, trying to make change, a lot of it falls down when people get burnt out and just go, oh, what's the point? I can't be bothered. So it's really important that you address burnout before it becomes an issue.
How do you spot the signs of burnout then, Jack? Obviously, if we say it's energy, you might just think, well, I know when I'm tired, I yawn or I get drowsy, but those things are probably quite obvious to spot, but they don't necessarily mean that you ran out of the motivation required to bring around that change, do they? You could be physically exhausted, but still highly enthused and motivated and driven.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily just, well, you've yawned quite a lot today, you must be burnt out. How do you spot the signs of like the non-physical side then? How can you tell if someone's...
Again, I would tie it to stuff that we've talked about again around self-sabotage. It's when those self-sabotaging behaviours become more apparent. So, classic one is the avoider. Like, you're just like, I really can't be bothered to do that. Like, I'll do something else.
Nobody cares about what you're doing anyway.
That can wait. I can do it at a later date. Like, that's like a sign of like burnout potentially.
You can't do this. Stop trying.
Yeah. The judge as well is very very active in that. They're constantly saying, oh, what's the point? You're not going to do anything. You can't succeed. There's no way this is going to happen, so don't bother.
And how would you spot this though, as an external observer? How would you spot someone who is approaching burnout? Would you say, I presume they wouldn't skip into the office or the factory, or they would presenting it, you must be able to spot this.
Yeah, it'll be obviously a lot easier to spot in people that are, you know, more of an extrovert, and their change in behaviour will be more apparent because they would suddenly be a lot quieter. They wouldn't be as vocal, they wouldn't be as energetic, they wouldn't be as sociable as they would be.
Someone who's always chipping in ideas in a team meeting stops chipping in chipping. There's something going on, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
It could be that it could be 100 things, but that might be a sign. Yeah,
definitely. And then similarly with introverted people, like they will just become more and more withdrawn, and it may be a little bit harder to spot. But again, it may, if you've got a good understanding of somebody that is introverted, then if you can see if they go even further the other way. So it is. There are obviously physical manifestations. Obviously, you'll be able to see it in their performance as well. As a manager, you'll be able to see that their level of work isn't where it usually is at, and then it's just a case of addressing that sooner rather than later.
How easy is it to just ask someone? Because you may just go, well, we'll have a weekly catch up, and I'll ask you. You're not burnt out, are you? Can people see it in themselves easily, or are people really good through all of the other things that you've mentioned, the saboteurs and everything else? Are people really good at kidding themselves that they're not burnt out? And it is all right that, I'm just...
It's hard to say. I mean, me personally, I think I'm fairly honest with myself when I'm burnt out. I'm like, you're burnt out. Other people, might well deny it. I feel like where the main, I suppose, obstruction to identifying burnout is that conversation. People above may see signs of burnout with people within their team, but they don't actually bring it up. They just kind of go, well, how do I approach it? Arguably, going from it's generally a performance management issue. So they're like, oh, well, I don't want to have that conversation because their performance has slipped. But actually framing it in the narrative of burnout immediately eliminates the blame from you're not going
it's like, what's up with your work is a much more confrontational way. Are you okay?
Yeah, are you okay? I can see in the level of work that something isn't quite right.
You don't see yourself. Is there something we can...
And then I can see outside of that you're a bit more withdrawn.
How do you ensure, Jack, that you're not confusing burnout with other things, like, whether it's just depression, excess stress, or something going on in someone's personal life, or does it matter? Can any of those things be the factor that cause the burnout?
There would be an element of it probably all being linked. It's trying to get to that root cause, but ultimately, by having those conversations, you can flesh out the exact issue there in the room, as opposed to just leaving it and just going, wow, well, hopefully it'll go away.
They've always been good in the past. They'll come round.
Yeah, exactly. They'll sort themselves out.
Because they just might not, might they?
No, exactly.
So, what do we do then, Jack, if we see burnout in yourself, or you see it in a team member or someone around you? What can be done then? Because it's not just like shake yourself down and
No, exactly. It's, I suppose, before we even get to that point of doing identifying when it's happening, it's like, how can we start to prevent it? So it's a question of, we need to equip people and ourselves with ways to actually manage our stress and manage our workloads to a point where burnout doesn't become an issue.
If I'd thought about it, that's a better question. How do we stop people?
Sorry, I'm not taking your job.
Yeah. How do we stop people getting burnt out in the first place? But I suppose, because then if people are burnt out, what do we do? But how do we prevent? So have you got some ideas and thoughts on how we should do that then?
Yeah, I mean, there is an element of kind of working on, as I said, developing a tool belt for preventing it, and that comes a lot down to kind of mindfulness, that people use meditation and stuff, or alternatives to meditation, like the PQ reps that we talked about and the self-sabotage stuff. There's also taking time to have a bit of self-care. Like, we've kind of separated the physical and the mental, but I suppose they actually all work together. So actually taking care of yourself physically will have an effect on your kind of mental burnout as well.
Yeah.
So exercise.
Because if you're physically fit, it's easier to get up in the morning. It's easier to have the energy to keep trying something.
A lot of people will do physical exercise as a kind of mental release as well. So
a lot of runners talk about how if they don't run every day or enough, they they can mentally feel themselves getting anxious about it and like,
Yeah.
I've got to get that run in. And I presume that's linked to some kind of chemical release of when you're running for an hour thinking about nothing else.
Exactly.
It's a decompression if nothing else, isn't it?
Clears your head, exactly.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be a run, it could be something else, but
Exactly, yeah. But like having that health, that elf, it sounds like I'm talking about Christmas, that self-care in terms of what you do with your physical health is so important as well. And there's research tying that to your mental health. I suppose another thing is kind of the level of support around you. So having that support, not just at work but at home as well, can also provide you with a lot of support around your mental health and your likelihood of burning out. So having somebody to talk to at home about stuff that's happened at work, to kind of have that release valve, is really valuable. And similarly at work, having somebody who's generally looking after you, like your line manager, who can also provide that level of support in terms of like being able someone to talk to, but then actually has probably more of a hand in actually managing your workload as well.
yeah.
So speaking to your line manager and going, I've got too much on at the moment.
Because I can't remember what it is, but if we haven't talked about it in the past, maybe we will in the future. But there is a mental health continuum, which I know we use internally, which looks at the factors that can cause you to become stressed, overworked, under pressure, whatever you want to call it, and workload, ability to control the work, your timing of work, your ability to do the work. They're all really important factors in how you feel about your work, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're not all in your control. Some of them are in the control of the rest of your team and your managers.
Yeah. So yeah, it's about having that relationship with the people that have that control, and being able to talk to them freely about it, and them to be in your corner as well, to be like, well, okay, because not particularly helpful if you go to your line manager and go, I feel like I'm getting too much work, and they're going like, no.
Shut up, keep your head down.
Yeah, exactly. You've got fine. Well, I don't care. I'm so much busier than you.
You think you're busy, wait till you say how busy you are. Because everybody wants to hear that, don't they? I'm so
exactly.
busy.
Your problems aren't.
You think you're busy, yeah. well, I know I am, yeah.
And obviously because
that's just communication. I know to some people this might feel like, well, we're using a lot of terms and in ways of describing things that might be new to some people, but it's just having someone within a work environment where you can have that simple discussion about workload and why you feel the way you are, and being open from both ways and approaching that with without an agenda, like an honest discussion where you feel open enough to just say what's actually going on. They might not be able to help, but sometimes just talking about it might throw up some ideas about how you can make change within your own remit. Or if it is a manager that you've got that close relationship with, just whatever the words you use are, just trying to get it out there so at least they know. Because you might just be sitting there going, well, they can see that I'm busy and they don't care. Let's not assume everyone else is super conscious of what's going on, and somehow you're the only one who's they're probably just as oblivious, aren't they?
And you do raise an interesting point. An element of it can just be getting it off your chest. They talk about like the chimp brain, where it's something that's constantly in your head and you think it's a massive deal, but actually just having that ability just to vent it and say it and get it out there and someone to listen, you can actually go, oh, actually I feel a lot better. So, but again, like that's just one potential avenue that's going to go down. I suppose another thing to note on is obviously having the support at home, the support at work, internally, but then also having like an external person as well that you can speak to, like a mentor or a coach, for example, somebody that's possibly removed away from the office politics of stuff. And I mean, there's a lot. Every office has its quirks and foibles.
And to be fair, your manager might be the one causing the pressure. Exactly. You're not going to get anywhere if that is the case and they refuse to budge. So you do need someone else to touch base with, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. And again, they can provide that fresh perspective to you. So, and give you some potential ideas. And obviously, I suppose another important thing in terms of the preventative side of it is like always to have that growth mindset, to always be thinking about improving, not just standing where you are and staying stagnant. And breaking down insurmountable tasks or goals into smaller chunks, and that comes from having an action plan.
Yeah.
So again,
it's funny how all these things fit together, isn't it? Because you may go, well, I can't do anything about this. You know, I was doing a session earlier in the week with some people where we talked about OBED, above the line thinking, below the line thinking. I can't do anything about this is a below the line kind of way. Blaming them, blaming others is quite an easy default, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't. Sometimes that's true. It is them. But quite often there are things you can do, and if you're just too close to it, so sometimes taking that time out lets you come up with those ideas and lets you get that refresh, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's controlling the controllables, basically. That's the simple way of putting it, basically.
What do we do then, Jack? I mean, some of the prevention things you've mentioned are, those the PQ reps, the taking your time. The meditation type things, if it's going for a run, hitting the gym, watching a film where you're not thinking, like, whatever it is you do to get that break, great. Make sure you're fitting those things in. Look after yourself physically. It's not just mental, it's physical. The personal accountability mindset, all really important. Is there anything else before we move on to then, what you can do if it's too late, you're already in it? Or some of those are about cure as well as prevention, aren't they, to be fair?
Yeah, I suppose that some of these things can be brought in, at the point where you're starting to experience burnout as well. I suppose the break thing as well is important, to take breaks at work. It sounds pretty straightforward, but the amount of people that will just get in the morning and just work through, sometimes not even like take their lunch break.
Throw a sandwich down in 4 minutes at the desk, yeah. Exactly,
and just keep working. When I've found, particularly doing like the self-sabotage stuff, that you take 2 minutes out, do some mindfulness stuff, not at your desk, go away. Obviously, take your lunch break, go for a walk if possible, clear your head. And even just taking time out, what I found really useful is just maybe once every couple of months, just taking a couple of hours out of my work day and just being like, right, okay, let's just assess where we are at the moment. Let's step away from the work I've been doing.
Yeah.
What direction I've been heading? Have I actually been? Are we following the plan that we pulled together, like at the start of the year?
Are we any closer? Yeah.
Exactly. So just taking that time out and to reassess and reevaluate what you want to do.
Because there's, we're probably straying slightly off topic here, but it feels quite relevant. When I was doing the exams, the lecturer said, when you're revising at home, as long as you get the right answer, it doesn't matter what it looks like. He said, so if you've got like a red pen and your Tipex and your ruler out, when you're lashing computations out, you're wasting time. You look busy, you feel busy, but if you do 3 perfectly presented exam, mock questions, and you've spent most of the time making it look nice, that's not as effective as you think. You feel busy, but you're busy with the wrong stuff,
Yeah.
You should really just, lash 10 out quickly, right? Okay. And then you can work on what it looks like in the exam, make it legible. But if you just want to test the answer, get on with it. And I think people probably fall into that at work. They think, well, I've turned up, I've done 8 hours today, why am I no closer? It might be because you're just not doing the right stuff.
Yeah.
Which of course will just add to you think, well, I can't work 9 hours every day or 10 hours every day.
Well, that's what some people's reaction is. It's like, I'm not getting where I want to be. Well, obviously
I need a better red pen. No, get rid of the red pen. You shouldn't have a red pen when you do an exam question, mocks, just don't waste your time on that.
Yeah.
So where do people turn for that then? Because I know we keep saying, well, that's the kind of thing we can help people with, but we're not trying to pitch here. We're not selling these.
No, not at all.
We can't do it. What can people do in their own workplace? They go, right, just listen to that. I've got 10 hours ahead of the same 10 hours I did yesterday, and I can see it, 10 hours a day going forward. Are there some basic tips that people can do within their own space without going to external help that can just go, let's plan the week better? Have you got any thoughts on?
Well, I suppose the first thing that I would want to say is, like, it's going back to purpose. Is what you're doing fundamentally what you want to be doing? Does it tie in with do you feel like you're adding value to does it chime with your personal values, basically? That's the first thing, because that's probably an immediate red flag if it's a case of I'm doing 8 hours of work and I don't feel like I'm doing anything.
Yeah, because if it's just not what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, well, because burnout presumably happens quicker on tasks you don't find rewarding.
Yeah.
Is that another way of
Absolutely. Well, as
that?
you said at the start, it's implicitly tied to your motivation. And if you're not motivated, if you're doing stuff that you don't want to do, then your motivation levels are going to drop. I
think that's why I mentioned jogging already. A lot of joggers, a lot of people think, well, I'll jog, and that's and it, like you use your trainers twice and you go, that's just not me. Doesn't mean that no exercise will appeal to you. There's something else out there that does. Yeah. And you will try harder at that. Mm-hmm. Jogging just wasn't your bag.
Yeah, it's not enjoyable for everyone.
And jobs are like that, aren't they?
Yeah. Very, very much the case, yeah.
Especially if it's your own business. Mm-hmm. You can control what you do. It's up to you what you do in your own time when you're your own boss.
Exactly, yeah. So if we can tick off from that point that I'm in the right job, this ties in, or I can see parts of my job which like chime with me, with my values, the stuff that I enjoy, then it's a case of, well, how do I start to do more of that stuff? And that's where you're looking at almost like a waste audit in terms of, or an energy audit, we call it sometimes.
Where you're spending your time during the day, which bits do you not enjoy? It's almost like that quadrant, isn't it? Is it the Covey quadrant? It's like...
Where you basically can map.
It's not that one, there's something else, but yeah,
there's lots of different quadrants.
You should be doing the stuff that motivates you, that provides good value. You should get paid well for the things you enjoy in a perfect world. Yeah. And on the opposite end of that same spectrum are the mundane tasks that they need to be done, but they're of little value and you don't enjoy them. Yeah. So you're doing 10 hours a day as an architect and you're doing an hour a day of writing your books up. I just get someone else to write your books up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how I would map it is kind of energy invested versus time. So you obviously want those high energy, energy given against energy taken away against time. So you obviously want the stuff that gives you energy, that obviously costs you as little time as possible, maximising those. And as you said, the ones that drain you of energy and cost you a load of time, you need to look at how can I eliminate these? Do I need to outsource it? Do I need to just stop doing it altogether? If it's a certain service line, for example, what the hell am I doing this for? I don't enjoy it. Yeah. And similarly, if it's other tasks, like can I delegate this to another member of the team? Can I, as I said, look at outsourcing
in team, you can read loose, because you just mentioned outsource. It doesn't have to be, you might not have a team. Yeah, but there's someone out there enjoys doing the thing you don't like doing.
Exactly, yeah. So it's a really interesting one. So that's one potential way of doing it. And then there's also kind of the typical kind of waste audit that you can do as well, which is kind of tied to the Kaizen idea of Toyota, where you again eliminate all the waste, and that waste can be stuff that you just don't enjoy doing.
I think we've done something on the waste before, haven't we? So that's like, double producing, over producing, waiting. There's like 7/8 depending on whose model. Yeah. But there's a bunch of wastes. Which again, if you're running out of energy and motivation, why waste your energy and motivation on stuff that's not adding to the bottom line, for want of a better word?
And there's a lot of processes that will fall into that category, stuff that you're like, well, why am I wasting my time like doing all of this? What's the benefit of it? And you're like, well, it's costing me a lot of time. Well, we can look at ways of automating that potentially, because technology's out there to help with some of the very mundane.
One thing I say to businesses is if you're still doing things the same way today as you were 5 years ago, you're definitely not as efficient as you could be. Mm-hmm. So, if you've got systems that have been in place for 30 years, you're staggeringly unlikely to be as productive as you should be. Yeah. Which is also demotivating. If you've got competitors starting up from nowhere, you think, well, how are they doing all of that from nowhere? Yeah. That's because they haven't got your 29-year-old system, have they? If they've got the 1-year-old system, that is the best way to do it.
Yeah, because that is the mindset of a lot of businesses, is like you get a process that works and you go, that's it, that's the one. That's it, we've fixed it. Yeah. It's like, it may work for a time, but then there's always going to be better ways of doing it. And I suppose that comes into the growth mindset as well, in terms of like the thought should be, when you're starting to feel like overworked, it's like, well, how can I find ways of being more efficient? As opposed to like...
Because the last thing should be, I'll put another hour in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Particularly because, the personal life is also a release as well. I mean, work-life balance is so important and a factor towards burnout as well. If you're feeling like that balance is completely off kilter.
It's funny because you say work-life balance, and I can't remember who it was, but someone within the last year even said to me, there isn't a work-life balance, there's just a life balance. Mm-hmm. And work is one of the things you balance. Yeah. It's not like you've got life and work. Mm-hmm. You have life, and work is just one of the... It's a weight rather than the scale. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's almost like a work pleasure, work family. They're just things you weigh against each other on the balance of life. And I think I don't know if I've done that any justice at all, but I think people just keep confusing the fact that there is work and everything else is the rest of the balance.
I think the best analogy is the jar analogy, where you're putting in the rocks. And I suppose work is one of those rocks, but that goes alongside family, the other things that are really important to you. Yeah. And it's the case, and then there's the smaller pebbles of the less important stuff, and then the smaller ones, and then the sand. Yeah. So don't put, your work rock shouldn't be so big that you can't fit all the other stuff in.
Nothing else gets in, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So make sure we've got a purpose, get rid of the stuff we shouldn't be doing, make sure we're efficient. Is there anything else? If someone's too far in? And what if you're the manager spotting burnout in a team member?
I think there's...
What can you do for them?
It's well, I suppose it's you have to address the concern, but do it in a sensitive way. Yeah. Again, not coming from that aggressive, accusatory angle of your work's absolutely crap at the moment. What are you going to do about it? Yeah. It's more of coming in from that compassionate place and going, well, I understand things don't seem to be quite right, and just give them the opportunity to open up.
Because if you approach that wrong, that person's judge is just going to go, right lads, we're on, and just throw loads of the saboteurs on and just embed further on if you get that wrong.
Yeah, they'll be like, well, manager spotted that you're a failure, or
we told you, told you you're wasting your time,
or what's this manager talking about? The bloody cheek of them. They went off and they had a half day last week. Yeah. And they're saying that I'm not working hard enough. Or they go into victim. Yeah, so it's so important how you go about that, and then also following up on that, rather than just being a kind of just a one-off. A one-off like going, oh yeah, that must suck. Oh, we can talk about reducing your workload once you've cleared your desk.
But then never actually do it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's again coming from that place of compassion and addressing it as early as possible, and then following up on it, and just trying to slowly take a bit of work off them if it needs to be done.
Because it doesn't have to be forever either, does it? No. You can let them catch their breath, I suppose. Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's not, well, we're taking all your work off you and someone else is just going to have to do it forever. Mm-hmm. It's, well, yeah, we'll balance stuff, we'll move it around a bit till you get your steam, get back up to steam.
Absolutely. And it's just kindness all around, so you have to be kind on yourself if you're the one experiencing burnout, and just accepting, right, okay, I need some help here.
Because it's interesting, we've talked there about how the classic scenario was the manager isn't doing enough half day while I'm killing myself. Mm-hmm. But actually we see just as often the manager has taken way more pressure than they should because of a failure to manage their team properly. Yeah. So we're talking here about how the manager might help and take some work off someone, but just as often it's the manager under pressure who needs to use their team more efficiently and better, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And again, that's where the conversation happens above them as the director, going like, well, are you managing your time as effectively as you should be? Like, I noticed, for example, you were the one. Why were you pulling together that report? Surely that's something that Thingy can do underneath.
Why are you always the last one here? Your team have all gone home. Like, well,
exactly. Yeah.
If all you're doing is managing your team, why are you still here in the wee hours?
Exactly.
Yeah. Good. Okay then. What's your final thoughts on this then, Jack? Have you got what's the big thing everyone gets wrong on it? Or
well, first of all, I suppose that no one's fully prepared for the consequences of burnout, or prepare themselves to fight getting to a stage where they are going to burn out. So it's thinking about those preventative measures. just because you're not experiencing it at times where you've been stressed in the past doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think everyone, if they're being honest with them, has experienced burnout to some degree.
They might not call it that, but yeah,
or exhaustion, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
lost their mojo, like, yeah.
I felt it during lockdown, and I wasn't. Yeah, I was probably working quite hard. I was, the whole kind of boundaries of work and life had been kind of blurred. So you were having phone calls with clients kind of later than you would normally do. You're probably working
in your kitchen, like, oh, well, I wouldn't normally. Yeah. This is all weird. This, yeah.
Exactly, or you'd be having or you'd just be like, you lose track of time because you just don't have the commute. So you'd be like, oh, bloody hell, it's like.
Because the office doesn't empty around you. It's like, oh, didn't realise I'm.
Oh God, it's 10 o'clock at night. What the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
And probably the main fact was just the loneliness of it all. That was a big factor for me, and that really affected my motivation, which then led me to burn out. So I suppose, and I wasn't prepared for it because I was like, well, I've done long hours before, I've worked, I've done all of this extra stuff before, it shouldn't be an issue, but actually, and then suddenly a slightly different scenario happened. You repeated a pattern, but in a different context. Mm-hmm. And it changed the outcome.
Yeah.
So now it's, as I've said, I've learned now to be more mindful of potential burnout and also prepare myself for it. So running, mindfulness, meditation, taking time out, that stuff that I've done off the back of that, I suppose. So I suppose that the two key takeaways are self-care and also like awareness as well. So if you spot it in someone else, is addressing it in the correct way.
Yeah. And also, because they're linked as well, because if you're not looking after yourself, you can't look after others, can you?
No.
If people are dependent on you, then you need to make sure you're in a good place.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you don't want your mental health to deteriorate when you suddenly become the support for someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not saying that in a way to add pressure to someone, but yeah. But, and and often it's just about, like you mentioned this tool belt quite a lot. Some of these things are quite easy things to get to grips with once you know what they are and you've practiced them a few times. They become second nature, don't they?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be
building habits as well.
Yeah, yeah.
It becomes habitual after you've done it for a while.
Yeah.
And if you can catch yourself in a moment of stress and then identify it, label it, and then do some exercises to calm yourself down, like you see it as effective, you're more likely to use it.
Yeah.
So
because everyone's heard of the idea of, right, count to 10, take a breath. If you're feeling getting angry or something, like, so it's just having like a mechanism for the other emotions.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not. I'm not suggesting like you feel stressed and you go, right, okay, I need to go off and have like an hour.
I'm going to run a marathon.
Yeah, or I'm going to go do a 3-hour yoga session. Like these meditation tools are meant to be short and sharp and it's like a very condensed way of distracting yourself, refocusing.
I find something that works for me quite a lot, and it's handy because of the work environment, is if I come off the back of doing something that was quite intense, quite technically challenging, I've been doing something for a couple of hours, I don't then just like pick the next job up and start it. Especially not if it's another one of the same, like, another meaty job. I'll purposely just walk, make a cup of tea, walk up, pop my head in. This is half the reason why sometimes I pop my head in your room and you go, how are you doing? Are you all right? I walk away and I haven't really done anything.
Yeah.
Probably quite disruptive. And if it is, I'm sorry, but it helps me come back to my desk and feel like you're almost, you've had a line between the thing you've just done that was intense before you then just do another intense thing.
Yeah.
It gives you that like breather. And actually I found that my watch is pretty good at this. Every hour I tend to, if I haven't walked around enough, it says you got 10 minutes to get your stand in, I think it's called on Apple. And it's actually a good little reminder, because if I haven't moved anywhere, then I think I should. And I think just that little walking around the office is just enough to do it.
Yeah.
If you're at home, you could just go and stand at the front door and just watch people walk up and down the street. Just break for a minute. I think it's really important. Good. Awesome, there we go. Yeah. Burnout, how to spot it, how to prevent it, and what to do if you're in it.
Yeah.
As always, we've talked about a lot of other topics. Search through, you'll see saboteurs are in there. I'm pretty sure we did the 7 wastes.
Change success.
We did the change success model. So if any of these things you think, what the hell are they talking about? It's all in there. The back catalogue is pretty good. And hopefully it'll start to, like, if you piece these things together, you'll see how closely they're all linked. And almost any one of these tools would highlight the things that you need to be aware of and things you can do, wouldn't they?
Absolutely.
So pick the one that works best for you and lean into that one, I suppose. Thanks very much, Jack.
Pleasure, as always.
As always, it's been great. So that was this week's episode on Burnout. We hope you've enjoyed it. As always, we're looking for any comments, any feedback. Give us a like. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, as the kids say on YouTube, for next week's episode. Until then, see you.